Breaking news just into our newsroom this morning. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide overnight. ABC News reporting he was found dead in his lower Manhattan jail cell.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Big story of the morning, breaking news. Disgraced multi-millionaire Jeffrey Epstein has died by suicide. This is according to numerous reports, and Epstein was awaiting trial after being indicted on sex trafficking charges.
The name Jeffrey Epstein evokes a complex mixture of crime, wealth, power, and unanswered questions. On a morning in August 2019, the world learned that Epstein, a disgraced financier and convicted sex offender awaiting federal trial, was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, where he had been held on charges of sex trafficking minors. It was a moment that instantly rippled far beyond New York's federal detention system. Epstein's connections to powerful figures and the gravity of the allegations against him made his death more than a procedural footnote. It became a source of deep skepticism, intense public scrutiny, and competing narratives about what actually happened in that cell. What follows is a detailed look at the official findings, the irregularities uncovered, and the theories that have endured, shaping public discourse years after the event.
The night before he died, new documents show convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein left a meeting with his lawyers to call his mother. She had been dead for 15 years. More than 4,000 pages of records obtained by the Associated Press detail the days leading up to Epstein's death and how Epstein struggled to adapt to life behind bars, awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking involving minors. 2 weeks before his death, the 66-year-old millionaire who had hobnobbed with rich and famous and had his own private island.
The day of his death. On the morning of August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. The discovery shocked both the public and law enforcement, given the high-profile nature of his detention and the serious charges he faced. Prison staff immediately performed CPR in an attempt to revive him before rushing him to a nearby hospital. Despite these efforts, Epstein was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The circumstances surrounding his death were immediately classified as suspicious due to his notoriety and the gravity of the case against him. Epstein was 66 years old at the time and had been in federal custody for just over a month. He had been arrested on July 6, 2019 on charges of sex trafficking minors, accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls over several years. He pleaded not guilty and was awaiting trial in what was expected to be a landmark federal case. The allegations involved extensive networks of young victims and implicated powerful figures, which only intensified public scrutiny. Epstein's death occurred less than 6 weeks after his arrest, cutting short a legal process that promised to expose further details about his crimes and associations. The timing, along with his connections, would soon make his death a subject of intense debate and speculation. Official autopsy and suicide ruling. The New York City chief medical examiner conducted an autopsy and ruled Epstein's death a suicide by hanging. The examiner's office concluded that Epstein had hanged himself in his cell using a bedsheet, a finding that was formally announced on August 16, 2019. This official ruling was not without controversy. Epstein had been on suicide watch earlier in his incarceration, following an incident in late July when he was found on the floor of his cell with neck marks. Although he was placed on suicide watch for about a week, he was removed from that status shortly before his death and placed in the special housing unit, still supposed to be monitored. Irregularities and security failures. Almost immediately, questions arose about how Epstein could die in federal custody under conditions that should have prevented such an outcome. Bureau of Prisons procedures require regular inmate checks, especially for individuals at risk of self-harm. Yet reports indicated that during the hours before Epstein's death, the guards failed to perform routine checks. They later provided false records, and both were eventually charged with conspiracy and record falsification related to their conduct that night. The Metropolitan Correctional Center was also reported to be severely understaffed, and guards were often working extended overtime shifts. These conditions, critics argued, created an environment where lapses in oversight were more likely, if not inevitable. The combination of a high-profile prisoner, documented lapses in protocol, and mistakes by staff fueled widespread concern about the circumstances of Epstein's death. Each failure in procedure became a focal point for those questioning the official narrative.
They claim it is indisputable that the authorities violated their own protocols and that they plan to conduct their own investigation and will even pursue, quote, legal action to view the pivotal videos, if they exist as they should, of the area proximate to Mr. Epstein's cell. Sources tell ABC News that Epstein, who was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges, hanged himself with a bedsheet, his accusers vowing to get justice.
Ongoing investigations. Federal authorities did not simply accept the initial incident report. The FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice's Inspector General opened investigations into Epstein's death and the conditions at the facility. These inquiries examined how Epstein came to be left unattended despite prior concerns, and what role, if any, systemic issues played in the incident. More recently, a joint review by the DOJ and FBI reaffirmed the official suicide ruling, stating they found no evidence of outside tampering or involvement in Epstein's death, and that surveillance footage did not indicate unauthorized access to his cell. The report focused on procedural failures rather than foul play, disputes, and contrary expert opinions. Not everyone accepts the official conclusion. A private forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden, who was hired by Epstein's family to observe the autopsy, suggested that the injuries in Epstein's neck, including fractures, could be more consistent with homicidal strangulation than a suicidal hanging. This opinion was shared in public interviews and added fuel to dissenting theories. Experts disagree about the weight of such injuries. Some argue that neck bone fractures, including damage to the hyoid bone, can occur in suicidal hangings, particularly in older individuals, while acknowledging that such findings are unusual and merit careful interpretation. Even Epstein's legal representatives at the time expressed dissatisfaction with the medical examiner's conclusions and demanded access to additional evidence, including detention footage that has never been widely released.
Conspiracy theories are spreading around Jeffrey Epstein's death. The former financier was found dead in his cell, where prison officials said he had hung himself.
Conspiracy theories and public doubt. The phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" became a cultural shorthand for skepticism about the official account. It spread quickly across social media and was often linked to broader theories that Epstein's connections to powerful individuals might have motivated silencing. Polls conducted after his death showed a significant portion of the public believed that Epstein was murdered rather than having committed suicide, a testament to how widespread the distrust became. Assertions involving former political figures and social elites further blurred faction lines, even though no credible evidence has ever been produced to substantiate such claims. Additional oddities, such as an early post on an anonymous image board about Epstein's death 38 minutes before official news outlets reported it, sparked additional speculation and deepened mistrust among conspiracy communities. Federal investigators attempted to trace the origin of the post, but were unable to identify the user. In late 2025, the Department of Justice mistakenly included a fake 3D rendered video of Epstein's alleged suicide in a document release, briefly adding to confusion before removing it. Officials clarified that the video was not genuine and was part of the challenge in responsibly disclosing vast amounts of material related to the case. What remains unknown. Despite extensive reviews and public reports, some questions remain unresolved. Why Epstein was taken off suicide watch, why monitoring at the MCC was inadequate, and why no camera footage of the actual incident has ever been publicly released are all points of ongoing curiosity and speculation. There is no widely accepted evidence that Epstein's death was anything other than suicide, but the circumstances around his custody failures and the broader context of his relationships and alleged blackmail materials continue to fuel discussion and debate. Jeffrey Epstein's death closed a chapter in criminal prosecution, but opened another in public inquiry and suspicion. The official determination remains that he died by suicide while in federal custody, supported by autopsy reports and subsequent DOJ and FBI reviews. Yet the irregularities surrounding his supervision, the unanswered questions about footage and procedural breakdowns, and decades of public fascination with the case ensure that Epstein's death will not be forgotten, nor its interpretation settled anytime soon. In the end, the truth, as established by investigation, lies amid fact, procedure, and uncertainty. How each piece fits together is still up for interpretation, and for many, the story of what truly happened that morning in a Manhattan jail cell remains a subject of intense curiosity and debate.